2012, I purchased a 2012 Porsche Panamera from Jim Ellis Porsche in Atlanta, Georgia. Initially, the car was incredible, but within a few months, its frame would catastrophically fail due to defective welds. Porsche uses a lighter weight, ride-enhancing aluminum frame in the Panamera, with critical frame components joined by welds. Most automakers avoid welding aluminum in such applications because in mass production cars such as the Panamera, welding aluminum is notoriously difficult. As of November 2015, Porsche, part of Volkswagen Group, still has taken no action to warn other Panamera owners their cars may be affected by this defect. What I did not know as I drove around town and at those racetracks was that critical welds in the car's frame were breaking apart and would soon fail completely. By the end of September, I was seeking answers for increasingly severe handling and steering problems. An independent Porsche shop and 2 Porsche dealers had done alignments. All had significant problems performing that work. But neither Porsche dealer would do any warranty work or provide a loaner vehicle. They said the car was perfectly safe. Driving home on I-20 from service at Hennessy Porsche, the car's steering wheel shot violently left, taking the car towards the concrete divider. Trying to control the car fractured my upper right arm and severely injured my shoulder. Fortunately, I had been driving under 50 miles an hour due to the car's increasing instability, and I was able to bring it to a controlled stop without wrecking. They had come to my house to load the vehicle to go back to Hennessy Porsche for service because the vehicle was absolutely undrivable. I had nearly gotten killed in the vehicle on the way home from Hennessy Porsche because of the driving problems. So after a week of calls, they finally agreed to send a tow truck through Porsche Corporate, PCNA, and through Hennessy Porsche. They connected to the car as per the Porsche manual through the tow hook. It's flatbed tower, so there's an inclined ramp. The car is at the base of the ramp. They connect the cable and the car is brought up onto the ramp. While they were bringing the car up onto the ramp, which again is the correct procedure, the car broke apart. The bulk of the car went down off the ramp, down a small hill, and if it hadn't been for the tow operator chasing it, diving into the window and diverting it, it would have killed my mail carrier. It came very close to hitting her. And then the car went on into a ditch. I requested that someone come to the site to document what had happened. I waited 4 hours. No one ever came. No one ever called. I just called them and told them one of their vehicles had broken into and that a person was nearly killed in the process. They could not even send somebody from the local Porsche dealer to deal with it. As the day started getting late, I went ahead and called the sheriff, asked him to do a report to get some documentation.
My evaluation of the welds did in fact show poor welding, insufficient welding at the rails where this grill work or that assembly attaches to those rails. The welds appeared to be porous. They appear to be welded on a base material that was unclean, and anytime that happens, the weld strength is significantly reduced. And as a result of the lower strength of the weld on both rails, it is my opinion that any misalignment, either the unibody or any misalignment within the car produces enough stress that would cause this type of failure.
My attitude at the time was that problems can happen, and the main thing that's important is how they're dealt with. So I was very willing to work with Porsche. One of my major concerns was the likelihood that other cars have the same defect. That has been a huge concern from the very beginning. One of the meetings that was held at Porsche's former headquarters in North Atlanta was to specifically discuss Porsche reporting the incident with my car. It's my understanding that when there's a safety incident of that nature, that there's requirement for immediate reporting. I went as far as contacting Porsche's general counsel to ask them to please file the report, because I did not want to initiate contact with NHTSA. I thought that was the responsibility of Porsche, and that it was in Porsche's best interest to initiate that contact. It became clear to me that they would not do so. Then, based on that, I sent emails to Porsche and said that my conscience required me to file a complaint, which is the consumer process through NHTSA, notifying them of what had happened to my car. I filed that. That's available online. I believe there's a copy in the file. I would assume as technical advisor that they asked for you to complete a report on my car. Did you complete a report on my car?
An internal report, yes.
What was its conclusions?
The conclusion was, my recommendation was made, and before that report was written, to repurchase this vehicle and do a further investigation.
As to the nature of what caused the problem.
I did not speculate, because that's what it would be. I wrote in my report that the car should be returned, should be repurchased and returned for further investigation of the welds on the front bumper. That's what it is. We keep calling it a frame, but it's where the front bumper attaches to the front frame.
Well, it's what ties the whole front together.
It's the front bumper, again, you
Because-
saw it today. So
I mean, as you see now, and as you can see in here, without the front cross member, those two frame rails are.
that cross, what you refer to as a cross.
This is basically what's left of my car. This is the production video. Without tying these two pieces together, there's nothing holding the car together.
Actually,
You don't have a completed,
Actually, we didn't come here today to defend that, but that's actually incorrect, because what you don't see here is that there's a subframe that goes under here that the engine sits in, that ties that together
the mounts
back
and
in
everything
about
for the
this area
engine.
right here. For your
But that's
sake, if you
still-
want,
that's not
I would tell
complete.
you the
It's sufficient to tie it
pieces.
together.
the end pieces you saw that were broken off are right there in that picture. That's of the pieces welded on.
Okay.
If that helps you.
This will help me. So that bumper that I saw and that you said, Ms. Moore, we can bring the bumper with us.
Mhm.
If she brought the bumper with us and the whole pressurizing thing didn't happen and that the fluid didn't leak out or whatever, could I still drive the car without that piece?
Yeah, you actually see it all, you actually see it all that. It's, we're talking. You actually see it all that. We're talking, we keep talking about that piece being the cross member, but it's really behind that fascia, that's the bumper, okay? So it would be like taking an old bumper off the front of the car. Yes, you still have the two pieces of the frame rail sticking out there that the bumper ties together. I'm not denying that, but you would only have
this picture's dark, I can't give you exact, but it would be back in here, is where the subframe ties together. So the part that would be out on the end that could potentially move would be this end out here because the bumper's not tied together. The subframe ties in back in this area.
Okay, and then that black central unit that I asked about during the inspection, that is still attached to the car, so this goes over in cases.
Yeah, it comes around that. That piece is the radiator. Yeah, there's an upper piece up here, but this is where the actual bumper goes across.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Mr. House. Ms. Moore, you can, if you disagree, then you can tell me what your thoughts are.
Kramer, he's the expert.
Well,
Okay,
the only thing that I would disagree with is that if you look at the damages, at the damage
This is my car.
after this occurred, after the front end assembly debonded, the only thing I would disagree with is that it would be virtually impossible to drive a car like that.
and
There was
why?
a hypothetical question that she asked, and if to answer her question directly, this piece comes off. This is all radiator mountings. This is all radiator stuff. So if it was supported, yes, it can be driven. In this case, when it pulled loose, this mount that's up here that would be tied right there and over here, had it stayed intact, which that's not a very good chance that would happen when this came apart. Had that stayed intact, then the radiator would be hanging
Okay.
right there. And you could theoretically drive it. I wouldn't recommend it, but you could theoretically drive it. And quite frankly, to your question, we move cars around at the dealer like this.
Okay.
Okay.
So the radiator, but the radiator in this instance came
Yeah.
off.
Yeah, it came with it.
Okay.
So remember in the picture she showed you in production, I told you about the subframe, the cross member where the suspension starts bolting, and now you see it here on this Moore car. So it's back, that point is back in here somewhere behind that.
Okay.
Okay, so that's where in fact, if you look at that right there, that is the famous camber eccentric for adjusting the front camber. That's where the lower control arm is.
There's a structural member. This isn't just radiator support and everything. There's a structural member on the back side of this. And I guarantee
This right,
yeah, that
that's
comes
called the
across.
bumper. That's the
No.
bumper beam. Yeah, it
There's
is.
inside that
Ms.
section.
Moore, what are you saying inside that section one?
I guarantee you cannot get the frame rigidity that you need for this car to handle properly without this section being intact.
It should
Okay,
be
now-
not correct, but it is. It should
Okay,
be, it's
now-
not correct, but it's your.
When you say, Ms. Moore, when you say handle properly, my question was,
For it to
can you
steer
drive
properly.
the car?
Yeah, you could probably drive around the parking lot. I mean, they backed it off the trailer. I mean, it was probably further damaging the engine, but they had no other way to deal with the car. They backed it off and got it in there and then, you know, in the storage unit. But you could know, there is no way, this, if you rigged up the radiator and everything, there is no way, besides, of course, the crash protection that you need from this component, there is no way that this car would be safe to drive at highway speeds or in other conditions to make turns,
It wouldn't-
and that it would handle properly.
It wouldn't be safe because there's a reason that you have bumpers and that the reason that they
And
have
it's
5
also
bumpers.
because,
Unfortunately,
I know, because
unfortunately,
I
a
know
lot
the
of these people do it.
experience of driving this car, and it wasn't simply that I was losing my crash protection. Why, in your opinion, did the car become so erratic in its behavior?
I didn't drive it, so that's would be pure speculation on my part. You're asking me a handling question without the benefit of having driven it.
Why do
And
manufacturers
couldn't
try and make frames as rigid
I
as
didn't even answer the
possible?
last question, Lisa. Quite frankly, looking at the alignment specifications, I have 3 sheets in front of me, and all 3 of these are in specification.
Yeah, until they
So
move the car and everything flexes again. Yeah, so they work for hours and hours and hours. Where one guy screaming, running out of the garage because he has so much trouble trying to get it into spec.
Okay. And what other questions? do you
And
have?
then
Ms. Moore?
as soon as the car is driven around the block, the car lurches because the frame is unstable. And the mechanic goes, I've never felt that before. I don't know what it was. But it was past 5 o'clock. Everybody else was gone. They said, we'll just have to check back on it.
And what other questions do you have for Portia?
And you lost my respect for saying the car would be safe and drivable with that.
Well,
But
that was the
anyway,
question.
other questions.
that's
The
not the
question
question.
wasn't, is it drivable at highway speeds or anything? The question just was.
You
can it
could drive it around the parking
And the
lot.
question was also not, let's get the record straight. If we're going to do this, let's have it straight. The question was also not safe. The question was, could the car be driven? And
I believe that's
answered the
what
question.
you implied.
No, it's not what I implied. I answered the question.
Okay. So,
You see what I've been dealing with. It is
Gotcha.
wordplay.
okay.
It is not direct
Ryan, did I
relation.
answer your question?
You answered.
So those 6 letters are wordplay, legal wordplay.
Okay.
That's CYA.
What
My
other,
other questions,
what other questions?
well, I think there just needs to be a proper investigation. You don't have any knowledge of quality control, et cetera, that's pulled from Germany after the incident with my car.
No, I don't have any knowledge of that. They're far beyond my,
Do you know what they told the NHTSA? I know what NHTSA told me, which was not factual information.
I do not know. I wasn't privy to that report, Lisa. I don't, honestly, I don't know. I know that I was called and asked about my report. They wanted me to show them, they wanted to make sure we were all talking about the same wells. I did that, and I have no idea what they reported back to me. So I did not see the report.
In your professional opinion, if these welds are bad, is it likely that other welds in the frame of my car are also bad? Or is there something unique about those particular welds?
There is something unique about those welds in that there's different metals involved with it. And the other part of that is, I would say, is that you alluded earlier to some different joining techniques in a Lotus. In a Lotus. And actually, a number of those techniques are used in a Panamera. So the only other place in this car that I would be concerned about is actually on the reverse,
There's no
which is the rear.
comparison between the Panamera frame and Lotus. They're night and day. They
Okay.
have the joining of flat surfaces with tremendous contact areas through bonding and riveting. There's no welding.
Okay,
and
but I
there's
want
not real
Mr.
touch
House to
components.
answer the rest of your questions. So the only other that you would be concerned is what?
Would if you flipped it now and went to the rear, because there's a similar cap on the end of the frame rail at the rear. So that would be another place where there is a weld that, again, the question was my opinion.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm giving my opinion,
Okay.
and my opinion would be that would be the other, that weld at this point hasn't been exposed, hasn't been tore open, so that would, and there are similar process, I didn't say they're the same, they're a similar process, that would be a place to go look to gather information regarding what went on in the front welds, because those caps weld
onto the rear in a similar fashion.
Okay, so did that answer your question, Ms. Or would he be, in his professional opinion, be worried about any other welds? I'm hearing that he would be concerned about the welds on the rear because they are done in a similar fashion.
My last question. In your professional opinion, and if you have anything to add, please do. Do you think this reduces the crash safety of the car? Say a head-on, a rear crash, in either the rear welds or the front welds, will the car offer the same crash protection as a car with sound welds?
Well, crash and crash testing is not my expertise, but knowing what I know about crash sensors, my answer would be no. I think that the crash sensor, because of the way the crash sensor works, would maybe be likely to go off or to send the signal of a crash, send the signal to the airbag control unit earlier because there would be movement sooner.
So your
I'd have to think
airbag
about
would
that
not
some more.
necessarily deploy at the most appropriate time in a crash.
Quickly
Split
thinking about it
seconds, of
here,
course, is critical.
it might actually deploy quicker in the accident than, because the movement would be there.
It's more, is it more sensitive to? would it be
Yeah,
more
would be one
sensitive?
way to put it, yeah.
So it may not be at peak inflation at the
Well-
time that the impact is transmitting through the car.
Yeah, and
I would
again, that's
assume that the resistance, the crunch section of the car, where that absorption of energy is going to take place, that the passenger protection, the strength is going to be diminished and more energy would be able to transmit more likely into the passenger
I
area.
don't think more energy, I don't think more energy. Well, okay, it would depend on, at that point, it would depend on the failure. If the welds were pretty well broken away when that happened, yeah, you could get more energy into the frame rails, which would translate eventually back into the cabin. But I think that airbags would have gone off earlier.
It could be the difference between
But-
someone having a minor accident and someone having their legs crushed or broken because, well, they got into an accident because their car wasn't as controllable as it should be, and then more energy came into the passenger compartment. And the likelihood that anybody would ever have suspected those people were either in a wreck because the frame of their car was unstable, or that they suffered far more serious injury because of the nature of those welds. Who's going to guess it? The car still piled around a tree, it still had a head-on collision with the wall, or nobody's going to be looking at that. They're going to assume the damage they see was to the crash.
And that would be that's an opinion, and I'm trying to answer your question as best I can and be fair to you.
It's a complicated issue.
It is, and I'm not going to promise you that when I walk out of this room and think about it overnight, I might think it's slightly different than I do right now, because it's a more complex answer than you can give in, say, a 30-second response.
This
to
is what
this
y'all
room.
should have been doing these last 3 years.
Well, that's why the car accident.
Okay. Any other questions?
Could Porsche have done, say my car was stolen the day after you inspected it. It was burned to a melted pool of aluminum. And Porsche wanted to know what kind of investigation could they have still done without my car to look into this defect.
Sorry, I'm
If my
not sure.
car had been completely
Yeah.
destroyed through whatever means, or lost, or whatever, what action could Porsche have taken the day after you saw the car to go ahead and begin investigating whether safety could be compromised in these cars, how many other cars could be affected?
Probably the same thing they did, and that was look for other cases. And I know that they looked for other cases. Quite frankly, I was asked about other cases. I don't have any to report to them or I would have. Quite frankly, I was asked about other cases. I don't have any to report to them or I would have. And
What
if
about
they do,
just
then
all
it's
the
up
weld
to
samples that you have in the QA laboratory back in Germany?
you. I don't know. I can't respond to that. I don't know the answer. Sorry.
I would say truly the investigation starts with your car. We need to start there to see what we need to know or not.
Why does Porsche need to own my car to investigate my car? What if I had been killed in a crash and it was, a very difficult probate matter? Could Porsche not go forward with the investigation?
That's legal questions that are beyond my,
Because I've been giving Porsche my permission since day one.
those are legal questions. I don't know the answer to that, Lisa, why they, because one of the reasons is they want to do, I'm sure, they want to do what they consider to be destructive
That's
testing.
fine.
and
There's
they
nothing
want-
more you
they
can
want
do
that
to it.
control. So,
I've had no problem with destructive testing. I wanted them to do it, but it was just a matter of money. I mean, that starts getting
so we
pricey.
have, as soon as I have the car back, we'll do it.
At this point, what I'd like for each party to do is give me a succinct closing statement.
And before I do that, thank you for your time and your professionalism and the manner in which you conducted the hearing. Much appreciated. Also, thank you to Ms. Moore and taking the time to be here today.
I'm so sure my name is not audible over Porsche, but thank you.
Our closing again is very quick. We have since the 18th day of October 2012 wished to repurchase the car. We will continue with that request that we will repurchase the vehicle and initiate an investigation into it. With regards, this is the only thing different than my opening statement that I'll make with regards to the additional costs and expenditures that Ms. Moore has incurred. Again, going back to the 18th of October 2012, had we been able to repurchase the car when we initially wanted to then, these costs would not be an issue. So, again, it's very simple. We are standing ready to buy the car back as soon as you give the instructions.
Thank you very much for your closing statement. Ms. Moore, you'll give me your closing statement as well.
So I think I do. I've been more worried, certainly. But I think it is pretty straightforward. My interest is to be made whole. Obviously, the significant pain that I've had due to the injury, which even though I've had surgery, it still limits me. It's still painful. I'm still gonna have additional surgery. But besides that, you know, that's outside the scope of this. I want to be made whole as far as my out-of-pocket expenses. I have felt passionately and strongly about this from the beginning because, again, my life work has been with companies like Porsche that have a lot at stake and have had a major problem. And the question is, how do they respond to that problem? And I've never seen a company handle a problem as badly as Porsche Cars of North America. That's saying a lot when you look at my work history. Y'all know there is a serious problem. There's a lot of potential repercussions. You have had the capacity to do the right thing. You've had the capacity to do a thorough investigation. Y'all are known for your engineering and your research. I'm quite sure that internally there's some very interesting documents. Y'all are also known how well that you can keep things quiet. When I want to purchase something, I don't just talk about it. I make actions to do it. 6 letters that kind of say maybe, sort of, could be, we want to purchase it, but we're not going to really tell you what the terms are. And we won't put those in writing unless you agree to the terms that you cannot see. It's merely trying to kick the ball down the court so you don't have to deal with the problem and keep it going as long as you can. That's bad practice. Again, not you personally, Mr. House, but you know, you're in the Porsche chair. So I think any investigation that comes out of this has to take it into account that Porsche has had 3 years to take care of this. They have failed to do so. They have made no effort to warn owners. They have made no effort to even quietly investigate whether other cars, as far as I know, through technical service bulletins, recall campaigns, other things. The information that I was told by NHTSA was not factual to your manufacturing process. So the veracity of what's been told government agencies, I'm not sure of. I think you have to be supervised. There has to be both government and independent experts watching over this thing. This car, I mean, if there have been serious injuries or there have been deaths, and you could have prevented those, I'm not sure what the legalities are, but the car that I own could very well be a piece of criminal evidence. I think somebody has to step forward, the state of Georgia Attorney General, whoever, and evaluate that before this car goes out of the country. All the testing, and it's crazy. Why exactly is the car being moved to Germany to do testing that can be done in Atlanta? There's nothing special about the testing over there. I'm sure there's non-destructive testing labs here in Atlanta, aren't there? I mean, y'all do that. So there's no reason for the car to go anywhere. I mean, you already have quality control samples of a lot of welds. You have to pull those periodically during your production. You have all sorts of other documentation that is critical to the investigation. The car, there's no reason to delay this even further by taking the car to Germany. In your professional opinion, do you think that that car can be accurately assessed in combination with the data that they already have in Germany at the production plants, that the car can be thoroughly assessed with testing here in the United States?
I think it can be done in the United States, and I think I can find a suitable testing laboratory that can do it.
What happens if, containers go off ships all the time? Been called to try and figure out, what's leaking out of that container that fell off the ship. It's You know, what if it's lost? Or it just, you know, ends up at the wrong port? It's kind of a critical item. So why don't we just do the testing here? Why don't we move it forward now? Why don't we keep somebody from getting their legs broke next week? So I would forego all the money that I am out of pocket, including the cost of the car. I will give that up if an independent investigation involving the government agency can commence. That's how serious this is to me. I would like to get the money back, but if I have to choose between A and B, that's where I stand.